He grabbed my arm like I was some criminal, like I hadn't just spent 12 hours escorting a dead soldier's body across 2 states. "Ma'am," he sneered loud enough for everyone in the terminal to hear. "First class isn't for decoration." He tried to pull me away from the gate. That was the moment I felt it, that cold silence in the air before rage breaks its dam. Like I wasn't in uniform. Like I wasn't holding a folded flag pressed to my chest. Like I didn't belong. "My name is Danielle Carter. And from wherever you're watching this, tell me in comments, have you ever been treated like you were invisible, until someone powerful made them see you?" I didn't flinch. I've had worse things come at me in the dark. But this man, this airport security guard with his plastic badge and puffed-up chest, he didn't know who he was touching. He didn't know I'd once held a dying 19-year-old boy in my arms as bullets slammed into our Humvee. He didn't know the boy in that casket was mine to carry because no one else had come. I looked him in the eyes and whispered, "Let go." But he didn't. He actually laughed. "We've got rules here. Uniform or not, ma'am, you don't belong in first class." That's when the gate agent gasped. A door burst open. And a pilot, full uniform, wings glinting, face ghost pale, came sprinting down the jetway. He didn't say a word. He just stopped in front of me, snapped a sharp salute, like the kind you only give to someone who's earned it in blood, and said, voice shaking, "Stand down. She saved my life in Iraq." The silence that followed was so loud you could hear someone drop their coffee across the terminal. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Not until I turned to the guard, looked him right in his suddenly trembling eyes, and said, "You should know whose name is stitched into this flag." And when I told them, even the guard fell to his knees. They all stared at me like I'd ripped the roof off the airport and changed the sky. I cradled the flag tighter, like maybe I could still protect the boy inside it. My boots didn't move. Not until the guard whispered, "Whose name?" Voice cracked open, hands now trembling. And I said it. "Private First Class Evan J. Carter. My brother. My baby brother. 19 years old. He loved peanut butter straight from the jar and had a dumb laugh that made everyone in our squad smile, even in sandstorms. And now he was dead. Wrapped in the colors he swore to protect. Colors too heavy for a mother to bury alone. That gate. It turned into a funeral aisle. People stood. The pilot stepped aside. And no one said a damn word when I walked down the jet bridge, flag in my arms, toward seat 1A. First class wasn't a luxury. It was an honor. The same guard who mocked me earlier? He stayed on his knees. Mouth open. Eyes wide with the kind of shame that no apology could cover. I didn't need his apology. I'd heard his type too many times. "Women don't belong on the front line. You sure you're Army? You don't look like it. What did you even do over there?" I did what they couldn't. I watched people die. I carried their blood under my nails and still saluted the next morning. I saved a man whose eyes were now filled with tears as he stood silently beside me on that plane, hand on his heart. He didn't need to say thank you. I could feel it. The plane door closed. And somewhere behind me I heard a voice whisper, "She shouldn't have had to say a word." But I did. Because America forgets its daughters. Because some people only see strength when it wears a man's name tag. Because even now, holding my brother's folded flag, I had to prove I belonged. I sat in seat 1A with the flag on my lap like it was glass. Fragile, wholly irreplaceable. The flight attendant knelt beside me, eyes wet. She didn't ask if I wanted water. She didn't offer snacks. She just whispered, "Do you want the cabin quiet?" I nodded. And for the next 3 hours that plane flew like a church. No clinking trays. No announcements. Just the hum of air and the weight of memory. Every time I blinked, I saw Evan's stupid grin from boot camp. The way he tied his boots too tight and insisted it was for speed. I told him once, "You're not bulletproof." He said, "Neither are you, sis. But you look like you are." I wasn't. I was the one who had to tell Mom. I still remember her scream. Not loud, not movie loud. Just this soft animal sound that didn't belong in a house with photos on the walls and Sunday casserole in the oven. That's why I volunteered to escort him. They offered someone else. I said no. If he was going home, he was going with me. But what I wasn't prepared for was that it wouldn't just be strangers disrespecting him. It was our own. The moment we landed, it got worse. The airline rep, some slick guy in a cheap tie, approached me at the gate. Sorry ma'am, the flag can't go through the main terminal. We have a service cart waiting at baggage. Baggage. Like Evan was luggage. I stood there. Motionless. Then I said low and steady, "Get your supervisor." 10 minutes later, half the airport staff was lined up in silence as I walked that flag out the front doors, chest high, boots steady. And the crowd? They didn't clap. They didn't film. They followed. In silence. But the worst part of this entire story, the deepest cut, the reason I couldn't breathe later that night, was what my mother whispered when I handed her the flag. "I told him not to follow you. I told him not to follow you." She said it with her hands shaking, her eyes locked on the triangle of stars. And for a second I hated her. I hated that she blamed me. That she saw my uniform and didn't see her daughter. Just the path that led her only son into a pine box. I stood there on the porch, the flag heavy in my hands, and my mother's face collapsed into her palms. "I begged him, Danielle," she cried. "I begged him not to go. But he wanted to be like you." I wanted to scream. But I was too tired. Too hollow. I didn't have the strength to defend myself. To explain that Evan had made his own choice. That I had tried to talk him out of enlisting. But pride's a funny thing. Can look a lot like guilt when it breaks. That night after the funeral, the house was full of casseroles and people who didn't know Evan. Not really. A neighbor said, "At least he died doing what he loved." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Another man from our church looked me dead in the eye and said, "What were you doing in Iraq anyway?" I left the room. I stood in Evan's bedroom untouched. Still smelled like him. A football on the dresser. His Xbox controller still plugged in. A stack of letters he never sent me, tied with a bootlace. And on his wall, in a crooked black frame, a picture of the two of us. Me in uniform. Him still a kid in high school, beaming like he'd won the lottery, just standing next to me. I slid down the wall and sobbed. Because I couldn't go back. Not to base. Not to duty. Not to the silence that followed every mission. But I didn't belong here either. They called me a hero at the gate. But at home, I was just the one who lived. And sometimes that's the loneliest job in the world. Grief. Grief has sharp edges. And mine was about to cut clean through someone I hadn't faced yet. The man who sent my brother into that ambush. His name was Colonel Victor Lance. Clean shoes, perfect posture, and a mouth full of medals he didn't earn in blood. He signed the order that sent Evan's unit on that convoy run. The one we all knew was suicide. But he never rode in it. He watched it from a drone feed. Called it routine. Said the route was secured. It wasn't. The road was lined with IEDs. Intel flagged it 3 days before. I know because I was the one who flagged it. I filed a report stamped and signed. Buried in his inbox. Ignored. Because Victor Lance didn't care about 19-year-old soldiers. He cared about promotion. Optics. Deadlines. When I requested a meeting, he refused. So I showed up unannounced. I wore my dress blues, the ones I swore I'd never wear again, with Evan's dog tags around my neck. I walked straight into HQ like a ghost with unfinished business. His assistant tried to stop me. But one look in my eyes and she backed off. I opened his office door like I had rank. Because truth is, grief outranks everyone. He looked up. Smiled. "Danielle. I didn't expect. You killed him." He froze. I closed the door behind me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I laid the file on his desk. The flagged route, the satellite images, my report. He didn't even look at it. He just said, "Collateral. That's war." And that was the moment I snapped. I leaned in, low and deadly calm. "You want to see war, Colonel? Watch what happens when a sister who knows everything decides to stop protecting you." I stood up. And with every step I took away from that office, I felt lighter. Focused. Because silence wasn't sacred anymore. It was poison. And I was done swallowing it. Victor Lance thought I was just another grieving soldier. He didn't know I'd kept every file. Every email. Every ignored warning. And if he thought my brother's story would be buried with him, he was about to learn who really writes history. I didn't go to the press. Not yet. First I went to the people who'd bleed for Evan. His unit. What was left of it. I started with Corporal Mendez, shrapnel still in his spine, stuck in a VA bed 2 states away. He cried when I called. Said he had nightmares of Evan pulling him out of the wreckage, shirt soaked in blood, still laughing. He kept saying, "I got you, man. I got you." Mendez whispered. I hung up and vomited into a trash can. Then I kept going. Private Hodge. Specialist Ramirez. Sergeant Cho. Every one of them had something. Emails. Warnings. Photos. Testimonies. And every one of them had been silenced. Threatened with demotion. Benefits on the line. Told to let it go. But they didn't tell me no. Because I wasn't just Evan's sister anymore. I was a storm. I compiled everything into one brutal, airtight package. Timeline, files, casualty reports, testimonies. I burned through ink in nights and grief. Then I walked it straight into a congressional office in D.C. A young staffer took the folder. Then she looked up at me. Saw the weight behind my eyes. The kind that doesn't blink. She handed it to her superior. And within 48 hours I was sitting in front of a panel. Brass. Suits. Eyes too clean for war. They asked questions. I gave answers. They asked again. I gave details. Finally one senator asked, "Why didn't you let the military handle this internally?" I leaned forward. Because the military did handle it. And that's why he's dead. Silence. Real silence. And then leaked documents. Investigations. Articles. Colonel Victor Lance's name was on every headline. Turns out, Evan wasn't the only casualty on his resume. Just the final straw. But the world still didn't know who Evan was. That part was mine to tell. And I knew exactly where I'd do it. In a place where first-class seats didn't protect people like him. But where truth could. I booked a commercial flight out of D.C. Coach. Same as always. But I carried the flag in a wood box, polished to a mirror sheen. Evan's medals clinked inside like broken church bells. This time I wore full uniform. Not for attention. But for armor. At the gate I showed my papers to the agent. Military escort. Final honors for a fallen soldier. She nodded, gently touched my hand. Gate 3. I'll let them know. But life has a way of circling back to the wound. Because waiting at that gate was him. The same TSA guard from months ago. The one who grabbed my arm. Who sneered that first class wasn't for decoration. I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. Then the immediate stiffening of pride. Like shame wearing a badge. He stepped forward. I braced myself. "Ma'am." But before he could finish, the cockpit door flew open. And out walked Captain Roy Delaney. Delta pilot. Decorated. And the man whose blood once spilled across my boots in Tikrit. He didn't hesitate. Came straight up to me. Snapped into a perfect salute. And said loud enough for the terminal to hush. "Stand down. She saved my life in Iraq." The TSA guard froze mid-step. Passengers stared. Phones came out. The entire concourse slowed like time held its breath. I nodded calm. But I could feel my throat close. The captain turned to the passengers. "All of you, you're lucky to be sharing a flight with her. This woman dragged me out of a burning Humvee. And today she's carrying someone who didn't make it home." Silence fell like snow. The TSA guard took a step back. Hands trembling. I stepped past him. Not a word. But I heard someone whisper behind me. "She's the reason I wear this uniform." When we boarded, the captain made an announcement. "We are proud to carry a soldier home today. You see a seat draped with a flag. That's not an empty seat. That's sacred ground." And when we landed, every passenger stood. Quiet. Moved aside. Because Evan didn't need a podium. He had his story back. And the man who mocked us, well, he was about to face something even harder than justice. A mother's eyes. The airport terminal in Raleigh was hushed like a chapel when we arrived. The captain walked beside me down the jet bridge, slow and measured. He didn't speak, didn't need to. That kind of silence carries its own power. At the gate, ground crew were already standing in formation. 2 Marines in dress blues waited with polished precision. One of them gave me a nod, the kind only a soldier can understand. And behind them was my mother. Her hands clutched the small wooden cross she wore every day since Evan shipped out. Her eyes were dry, too dry. Like someone who cried so long ago the well ran out. When she saw me she didn't move. Didn't even blink. But when her gaze landed on the flag in my arms, something shattered inside her. I stepped closer and whispered, "Mom, we brought him home." And that's when she dropped to her knees. Not from grief. From something deeper. A kind of sacred collapse. I lowered the flag into her arms. He held it like a newborn, pressed her forehead to the folded stars. And behind us, people gathered. Travelers. Ground crew. A janitor with his hand over his heart. Even the TSA agent from earlier. He stood a few paces away, eyes swollen red, hat in his hands. I saw him try to approach. But Mom looked up. Her stare stopped him mid-step. "Was it you?" she asked, her voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." She stood slowly, straightened, and then she did the most unexpected thing. She stepped forward and handed him the corner of Evan's flag. His lip trembled. "You remember this," she whispered. "This isn't fabric. This is the last breath my son took." He dropped to his knees. In front of her. In front of me. In front of God and everyone. He said nothing. Because what could you say? But I wasn't done. The next day I stood in a small town church built of stone and time. Evan's funeral. Every pew was packed. Veterans from 5 states showed up. Men I'd never met who'd bled in the same dirt. At the front I stepped up to the mic. Held his photo in one hand, his dog tags in the other. My brother was the kind of soldier who gave away his last socks in winter. Who carried men twice his size. Who called me every time he made it out of something alive. Not because he needed to, but because he knew I did. The room was still. Then I pulled out a folded letter. "Colonel Victor Lance sent this. It's full of regret and valor, and all the words that sound pretty at a podium." I tore it in half. "And here's what I say instead. My brother was failed by the system. But he wasn't forgotten. Because we, all of us, refused to let silence bury him." Applause didn't come. Only tears. But it was the right kind of quiet. Later that week, Colonel Lance resigned. Stripped of command. His medals under review. And every soldier he silenced? They finally got heard. As for that TSA guard, he now volunteers at a veterans center every Saturday. The same one I visit when I need to breathe. I don't hate him. I just never forgot. And when I walk through an airport now, carrying nothing but memory, people step aside. Because they don't see a uniform anymore. They see the cost.